Reiner Braun, you're there on the streets of Lisbon, Portugal, there with many other people protesting against NATO and its continued treaty remaining in force in military cooperation. Is the European participation in Afghanistan, the militaries in Europe, in Portugal, in the militaries of other countries participating in NATO, do Europeans primarily see NATO as the leader and understand NATO as the leader with some kind of democratic voice throughout all the European countries, members of NATO, about how to proceed in Afghanistan?
You know, I think the majority of the European people, when you look to all polls, want the withdrawal of their troops in Afghanistan. They can't see the reason why German, French, Holland, Belgium and other troops should stay any longer in Afghanistan. They don't believe on this war. And what the Europeans have a good position to Afghanistan from the traditional role in the Cold War conflict as a military alliance mainly for defense. But they are very critical to a more offensive and war development of the new alliance. And our work as peace movement is to continue delegitimize NATO and say the new NATO, the NATO after the Cold War, is a war alliance, and we have really to stop this, to overcome that NATO is spending billions of dollars every year for war preparation, and we need this money for health care, for education, and for solving the problems of poverty and hunger.
We're on the line, if you're just joining us, with Reiner Braun, who is at Lisbon, Portugal, at the demonstrations against NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Reiner Braun is Executive Director of the International Lawyers Against Nuclear Arms and co-chair of the current No to NATO organization in the streets in Lisbon, Portugal. Reiner Braun, just time for a final question. What do the No to NATO organizations, the coalition, hope to achieve at this protest and bring back to their, particularly European government members of the NATO alliance?
You know, our aims are not so big for these 3 days. We have a counter summit. We have today very successful action of civil disobedience. We have now the demonstration with more than 20,000 participants. What we want is to raise awareness. We want to bring our concerns to a broader public. We are really well known, written and seen in the Portuguese and other European TVs, and our actions here are part of a long-term process of activities for delegitimize NATO and for overcome NATO. We know that this will not happen in the next 1 or 2 years, but we really want to change the opinion of the people in Europe that they are more and more critical to the North Atlantic Alliance and see and acknowledge that NATO is war and we have to overcome NATO. We know that this is a long process, but we start these processes, all our protest actions in Strasbourg 1 year ago. We continued it today and yesterday, and I think we will be at the next summit too, and we will see what happens in 5 years. I'm quite hopeful that we can really delegitimize NATO during the next year.
Reiner Braun, thank you so much for joining us from the streets of Lisbon, Portugal. The helicopters in the air we could hear earlier in the background. Are the demonstrators okay? Because we've heard reports of demonstrators not being allowed. Say again?
The demonstration is absolutely peaceful and non-violent. It is really a very colorful, quite huge demonstration, so we are very happy with that.
I was just interested because there, of course, are reports out of the Portugal authorities there, where the NATO summit is happening, not allowing in some of the activists who have tried to come into Lisbon, Portugal, refusing entry to over 100 foreigners since the border controls went up on Monday night, way back at the beginning of the week. You'd think Portugal would be denying itself all of that tourism that would result in the influx of hotel and other accommodations and economic little influx there. Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, before the NATO meeting even begins. You see,
this was a normal history they are doing. But but really nothing happened. You know, it is really a scandal that they don't allow the peace activists not to come into the country. You know, I know quite a lot of them which were not allowed. They are really non-violent peace activists, which are really well known as non-violent activists in their countries. They want to protest here, and you can again see democracy and militarization, democracy and NATO. These are really enemies. And when we want to defend and develop democracy in our country, we have also to overcome NATO, because really NATO is the enemy of democracy. And the stupid reaction of these very nervous Portuguese border police, this is was absolutely not necessary. We protested again, and hopefully the governments will learn that protest is a normal part of their actions, and that they should discuss with us and stop all their violent actions.
Well, Reiner Braun, again, thank you very much for joining us today. I'll let